Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael with the Crossfiles podcast.
And I'm Jerry with the Crossfiles podcast.
And I'm Dawn.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
Well, we're really glad and blessed that you're here. And happy Resurrection Day to everybody in the UK and America and all over the world. So Paul, if you don't know, Paul has an amazing channel called Understanding Conspiracy on YouTube, which you may be watching now. And he, for the last few years, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, has created his YouTube around the theory that the cultural and historical depictions of clowns are similar to that of the Nephilim or the giants from Genesis 6. So, Paul, how did you start with this correlation between the Nephilim and the clowns?
Yeah, so I actually started my YouTube channel in 2014. I was a fine arts student coming out fresh out of university. I was seeped in conspiracy theories and that as a subject matter for most of my artwork for those 3 years I was at uni prior to leaving in 2014. And I kind of ended up with the YouTube channel as a result. To get to the clowns, it was 2 years later in 2016 when there was the creepy clown sightings phenomena, which was scaring, scaring everybody, and the media was making a serious hype about it, and you could go on any media news broadcast anywhere in the Western Hemisphere, and this was happening. There were people dressing like clowns going in street corners, to schools, the edges of forests, wherever they could make it as creepy as possible in dark parking lots at night, wherever it was, just scaring people. And it can become like a mass hysteria event, doesn't it? And people were really on edge in October of that year, kind of building up to this. And my first take from the whole thing was, why is the media talking about this? I don't trust that anything gets onto that black box in the corner of a living room unless they want it there. And it's all symbol, it's all language of symbols for these people. So that was my first immediate clue that, okay, so if they're talking about clown sightings, then the clown is a symbol for something. It means something to these people, to the initiated of these occult societies and the mystery schools. And we're not supposed to know what it really means. So that was my first clue. My conspiratorial mind was already ticking straight away. I was like, so what's this clown thing about, And I'd had a lot of experiences building up to this that led me to roll with the connection quite fluidly. So I didn't grow up religious. I grew up in a I'd say a religious household. They weren't really against it either, they just didn't think about it. It just wasn't a part of our lives. I had a Catholic grandma growing up, and I think I went to church there a couple of times when I was a child, very young child, but I have vague memories of that, and the only memory I do have is a poor old lady in front of me collapsed and hit her head on the handle of the wooden pew, and I think she might have died. I think I was very young. I was very young,
Wow, that's not a good memory.
No, it's not. No, so I must have been maybe 8 or 10 or something. Like very young, and I kind of grew up and went down the typical atheistic route. Then that kind of molded and grew into an anti-religious standpoint for some reason, probably influenced by the people around me and just my inquisitive mind questioning everything was just that was my thing I was attacking at the time, and again so I went from a-religious to pretty anti-religious through my edgy teen years, from like 13 to 17 to 16, shall we say. But as I got older, I've always been an artist. I've always been a creative person. I've always loved to look at the world, analyze it, create holistic pictures. I'm a dot connector, not by nature, And I got more inquisitive as I got into my teen years, and I did start exploring things like drugs and psychedelics, but not in like a hippie sense. I wasn't doing it recreationally, either for fun, just to hang out. I was doing it because I genuinely wanted to see what people were seeing in these realms. And when I was 16, I didn't know this at the time. I really didn't know this. I was 17. But there's these things called head shops in the UK. And you can basically go in there and buy herbs over the counter, which are legal. And we got something called Salvia Divinorum at the time. This is years ago. I'm 31
I know
now.
what it
You know,
is.
yeah, exactly. And you don't think of anything about it because you think, oh, it's legal over the counter. It's probably a harmless herb. But I've been watching videos of people doing salvia at the time, having these trips, laughing hysterically, and this was like, for me and my friend at the time was like, this is it. This is the thing we need to do to see this realm or what's going on here. We need to experiment here. You know, very logistical minded about the whole thing, very analytical. And at that age, I ended up doing Salvia Divinorum and going to another dimension, and that shattered me. That destroyed everything that I prior believed was the case because
Yeah, that'll shake your
yeah,
atheism.
yeah, exactly. And by that point, I was like, okay, so I was wrong. There's something going on here. There's a world we do not perceive at all with our minds. I was wrong. I knew at 17, I was humbled hard from that experience, terrified. In fact, it scared me. I remember distinctly the first thing I said was no. That was it. Just no, I don't want to see this. You know, it's too. By that point, it's too late. You go.
This isn't real.
Yeah, but by that point, it's too late. You're off. You're going.
Yep.
You know, and
That's
this is
scary.
I didn't realize this then, but now I've done a lot of research and grown up and rolled with it. I realized what I was doing was actually equally, if not more so powerful than dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT, which is like the biggest psychedelic around. It's the key component in ayahuasca, for example. And it's kind of, I didn't know that's how powerful a drug I was truly going to do then. And from that moment at 17, being an artist, my life changed, you know, and I was on a journey. I was on a journey then to try and get spiritual, understand the world around me through a spiritual lens. And I fell into from atheism. You naturally go. The pattern's always the same. You go into kind of Gnostic, New Agey spiritualism of some kind.
Sure.
That tends to be where you go to next, you know, because I couldn't identify with Christianity. It was just so alien to me as a concept, and I had the typical worldviews of, well, that's just for like desert dwelling, illiterate people who didn't understand how the world actually worked and, you know, were just scared of death. I had the edgy teen views of religion and Christianity, you know, and I thought all the answers must be in the East. So I went heavily into Taoism and all that type of world and consciousness exploration through any psychedelic I get my hands on, basically. And that went on through from 17 to 22 roughly into university. It was getting harder and harder with those chemicals to get further, and I ended up doing DMT, microdosing acid daily, all these type of things, doing, you know, psilocybin mushrooms, getting synthetic versions of the same things. I didn't go back to salvia because it's kind of, once I've done it and seen what it's got for me, I kind of move on to the next thing. That was always my pattern. But this proved to me, these formative years of my life proved to me, okay, so there is a spirit realm and there's entities there. There are things there that are not just some figment of my own imagination that I'm just creating as some kind of weird collective archetypical consciousness of humanity. I am not God. These things are separate from me, but they'd like to tell me I'm a god. It's kind of, I wasn't buying it. And my naturally conspiratorial research, which started to kick in around 2012, was showing me I shouldn't be trusting anything just at face value anyway. And it got to a point in 2014 where I was at the end of my university degree, seeped in the end of the world mythos of 2012 and the Nibiru returning and the end of the world Mayan calendar stuff, and I was shocked and shaken from all of that. And I had no answers from all my research into the Eastern mysticisms or this exploration of psychedelics. I had more questions than answers, to be honest. I didn't know how to contextualize any of it. The New Age perspective has a lot of words with very little meaning to describe what's really happening. It's word salad most of the time.
That is so true.
You know, and I couldn't. I wasn't going for it. I'm not going for that. I need more solid answers than some airy fairy loosey goosey type of wibbly wobbly view of it's all just kind of consciousness, just flow with it, man type of attitude. I needed answers, you know, and I'd always been bumping into my research into the Christian perspective to explain everything. You can't get away from it when you research conspiracy. The Christian angle's always there because it's end time stuff and it's Satan, you know, and it's explaining eschatology and hermeneutics and all these things that kind of contextualize spiritual warfare, and I was heavily seeped in a lot of that towards that part of my life, and I just didn't want to take that jump to actually really go down it. I always thought, no, I can get the answers myself, I can figure all this out. I was borderline in that world where I thought, well, you know, we're all just God collectively experiencing the world and we just forgot that we're God or something like that, you know. But that, again, I knew that wasn't right. in the back of my head, I was like, no, we are way too flawed for any of that to be true. There's something wrong here, you know. So I went down the Christian route, but before that, I had to basically get on my knees and, as a broken man with no direction in life, basically a drug addict, inadvertently, that's what I become, you know what I mean? No direction, broken, all my receptors have been burnt out, I had nothing left to give, I was just scared, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know. So I just got down on my knees, and I was like, God, help me. If you're real, help me. I need help. I am screwed. I'm at the end here, you know, and I don't know.
Awesome.
I don't know what I'm doing. And then I had a bath. I was in a hotel at this time, miles away from home, at a family member's stag do. You know, they were getting married, and I was there just with the guys, you know. And I had decided to have a bath after doing this in this hotel room, and I hadn't had a bath since I was a child. I'd only ever lived in places while traveling through university all around the country, you know, in shower cubicles. I decided I'm going to have a bath and just unwind and relax. And as soon as I went under the water, bam, a massive shock of energy went through my body. I sprung up out of the bath. I thought I was having a panic attack. I was like, what's going on? You know, I was looking in the mirror, like, and then very quickly it disappeared as much as it came. But it wasn't painful. It wasn't scary. It was just a shock, you know. And from that day, nothing has ever been the same.
Interesting.
Amen. That was awesome. What a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That's
not
an
a story
awesome
like a false
testimonial.
story, but like a testimony.
Well, it didn't end there. You know, from that day,
course.
I've stopped all the drugs. I smoked weed every day for 8 years. I haven't touched the stuff since that day, you know. And I don't drink. I don't do anything like that. I have no desire to. My desires changed that day. It was a different. I suppose
It's
literally
amazing.
I was born again, is what you could say, and I understand
Yes.
that from a personal level now. I
Praise
get
God.
I get that experience,
Praise
because
God.
it's not that I wasn't perfect immediately. It takes time
No.
to rewire yourself and get out of these old habits. But I didn't want to smoke anymore. I didn't want to do these things. The things I used to chase, I didn't desire to chase anymore. And it took time, you know. But I'm completely sober of any of that stuff now, and that's when I really dived into the biblical perspective, and naturally, not having any context of what a Christian should be, I didn't know the rules of engagement. I don't have a churchianity upbringing or any particular dogma or
That's probably a good thing.
or denomination. So I kind of people would describe what I've become as a contrarian Christian, a non-denominational contrarian, if you want to give it a name. But I don't have a church
That's a good
necessarily.
name.
Yeah,
But
I can relate with that.
it's basically Jesus saved me, and I believe He is who He said He was. That's
Amen.
my
Amen.
that's my basic theology. Everything else is kind of nuanced and interesting, and
That's awesome.
I consider it fair game to speculate about. A lot of Christians don't, and I didn't know that until I started speaking, and people started telling me what I'm saying is outrageous or whatever. But I don't think it is. I think a lot of it is just out there for people who have been swimming in a particular ideology for so long. But yeah, that's my testimony. But you have to understand that that's when it really began for me in terms of spiritual attack, and that's what really led me to get these connections going where it got to the clowns, because it was only after I gave myself to Christ that the demons started to come for me. Prior to that, I hadn't had any experience with anything negative. It was all positive, you know. And just to clarify, I understand now. Their issue is that they had lost me, and I was a good vessel for them to gain pleasure from when they were inhabiting me while I was doing these drugs and doing this hedonistic lifestyle. But now that
I understand that.
you know, now that I had left it behind, I think it was more of a from the demon's perspective. Well, if we can't have you, nobody can. So they came for me, and I think they tried to kill me. I think that's how bad it was, you know. And there was a moment where, maybe a year after this event, I was just sat in my living room doing nothing untoward. I was literally watching television with my dog sat next to me at my mum and dad's house. I was dog sitting. Okay, it wasn't like I was doing anything weird, and I wasn't even thinking about much, you know. And suddenly the room started to go black from the corners and my vision, and it started to spiral and spin, and I literally felt what felt like my soul being torn from my body, you know. And I went paralyzed on the sofa. I just collapsed to the side as my darkness seeped in. And you think, all you think in that moment is, I'm having a stroke, or my brain is just switching off, or something. I'm dying is all I could think. And I did manage to say, Jesus help me. out loud. That's all I could do. And then instantly, bam, back in the room, gone, back to normal.
That's awesome.
You know what's interesting about that is when we spoke with Vicky.
Yeah.
Vicky Joy. You know who Vicky Joy is?
Yeah, I've talked to her loads of times. Yeah.
Yes. So when we interviewed her, she spoke about waking sleep paralysis beginning to be a thing. And that description sounds exactly like what she was talking about. Don't you think? I mean...
Oh yeah, well, me and Vicky are quite close now, to be honest.
Yeah,
I've got her on speed dial on Instagram, and we're always suggesting podcasters to each other because I've had her on my channel 3 times now to talk about the shadow entities and these demonic experiences, and she understands, she gets it. And when I told her my story, she was telling me, I've heard this 1,000 times before. These are this is quintessentially how it works, you know. And I do think, like I said, these attacks I was getting, I had sleep paralysis, I was having nightmares, I had dreams where I was being chased by the Hat Man, who I think was trying to kill me in the dream again. It was all these type of things. And then it culminated with an odd vision, and it was just 10 seconds. 10 seconds, came out of nowhere, was unprovoked again, just going about my day, and then suddenly I'm in the DMT realm again, a place I knew where I was instantly. I was like, I've been here before, I know where I am. I've just suddenly pierced the veil, and now I'm looking at the spirit realm. I'm seeing it now. I'm in that place, you know. Physically, I'm here. Visually, mentally, I'm back in that zone. And I'm looking up at an enormous black and white, big, wide, purple grinning, glowing, golden, purple-eyed jester monster with a skull shaped like spider's legs hanging down, but it's enormous. I'm looking at this giant in front of me with this black and white stripes, you know, and it was like blended into the wall as well, which it was like a monument of as well. And it had things flying around it, like little gold vehicles that were manned. Like, this thing was enormous, and I was in some weird psychedelic realm looking at a giant jester clown thing, you know. And I did not know what to make of that. I had no context to really understand what I was looking at, other than I'd heard people talk about DMT jesters in the past. Okay, people, when they take DMT, see jesters. It's a really common thing. But I had never seen one in my experiences in the past when I did DMT a few times and these other drugs. They never came to me then. But now I've left them behind and I've turned to Christ at this point. Suddenly they reveal themselves to me, or maybe God was letting me see them. I don't know. I don't know I did not know what to make of it. I can only speculate in hindsight now why that happened. But from that day, you know, that was implanted in my mind. There's something to do with clowns or jester-like looking things in the spirit realm. And I'd already done enough research into Gary Wayne's work, you know, Michael Heiser, Rob Skiber, all these people at the time were in that Christian contrarian conspiracy world, you know, to tell me about the Nephilim and who they were and why they were produced. And what happened to the Nephilim when they died is they became demons, as we would call them today, unclean spirits, disembodied spirits that wander in dry places, hunger and thirst, with no body to satisfy these needs. I knew all this biblical Enochian theology about where demons come from. I had all this experience with the spirit realm, and then I saw this jester in front of me. And then the 2016 clown sightings happened. And I knew enough about the occult and Freemasonry and all that. I've been studying all that for years to understand the language of symbols. And I knew how the media was controlled and how they use it as a language through the media to say a message. And I just knew then. So, demonic clowns, creepy clown sightings, demons and Nephilim, there's something here. So I went with it, you know, and I typed in Nephilim Clown, and no one had ever really connected the two ever before and made that connection. No one. But I did find one video of a person who was making a joke about people who believe in Nephilim. So taking the piss out of Christians is what he was doing. He was making a parody video of conspiracy theories. And he was doing it in history, in like the History Channel style, but it was a joke. He wasn't being serious. And he basically described the Nephilim as having white skin, red hair, double rows of teeth, you know, elongated skulls. The basic description of any Nephilim creature that we've ever seen in our research over the years, you know. But then he said that description and made a mocking joke. There's only one thing that can explain these. They're interdimensional killer clowns from outer space. And then he did the 80s movie reference and all these type of things. So he was just making a joke. But I knew then that was a confirmation. Okay, so there is something here, and no one's talking about it except this weirdo who's making a joke at our expense. You know what I mean? And even he doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't realize what he was saying there meant anything.
Yeah.
But
he did word of knowledge and didn't even realize.
Well, yeah. So here I am.
Right.
So I started the series in 2016, just talking out loud about everything I've said, these thoughts I've had, and just laying it out. Like, what do I make of this? You know, and one episode after another, here I am 8 years later, and I'm 43 episodes into the thing. I've been on like 70 podcasts. I'm almost finished the first volume of my book on the subject, and it went way deeper than I could ever imagine. Way deeper. Yeah.
I can't wait to see this book.
Yeah, I've actually just been working on the front cover today and the cover concepts and everything. But it's going to be a 2-volume book because it was originally going to be one big thick 500-page thing, but I've written like 200 pages, and I realized I've got a book that could stand alone as a volume. It's the history, where the Nephilim come from, everything we have that evidences the way they look inside and outside of scripture. And then it goes on to the history of the occult, circuses, secret societies, the invention of the clown costume, how it does literally relate to demons, and we can historically prove this. That's where the clown costume comes from. And then it talks about DMT and clown societies and shamans, and how we have societies that have always dressed like clowns to channel these things. And that's a precursor to Volume 2, which is going to be all about the ancestor spirit worship cultures in every continent who do dress like clowns to channel their ancestors. And then the second half of Volume 2 will be all the modern stuff: music, film, books, colorophobia, the multicolored collective, all the modern things. So 2 volumes of books, the history and the now. The history is pretty much finished. I have one more chapter and a conclusion to polish and finish off. I'm going to have that published probably in 2 months' time. Yeah.
Wow, exciting. We'll have to do a part 2. This is very, very excellent. It's so cool to see your research. And I've noticed you've done a lot of research also on the millennial reign of Christ, which is a often not talked about subject when people are interested in these things.
It depends what you mean.
Such as the clown theory, the Nephilim.
It depends what you mean by that topic, because that topic is a huge one right now that's taking the conspiracy world by storm. And my channel is called Understanding Conspiracy. I have to understand conspiracies as they come. That's kind of what I don't just talk about the clowns. I cover everything. You know, my game is conspiracy, but my niche just happens to be this clown thing. You know, but I talk about every topic.
Fast. It caught my interest. I mean, how many conspiracy shows are there out there, and researchers but to just focus in on one point like this is the first time I've ever heard of, thought about it before, but I've never seen anyone actually research it. So this is very exciting talking to you, Paul. And as someone who's new to this field, I'm going to be picking your brain with some dumb questions here. But if I can ask, where does it really start? Like, where does the clear sign that clowns are the Nephilim, or have that connection, just for the newbie here?
Sure. Well. We can go down the history first of where we get a clown costume from. So first of all, that just lays the foundation that a clown costume is quite literally modeled after demons, first of all. And then from there, we can start looking at how the occult have always known this, have always used this practice, and still use it today for a very specific reason. And that's to open more channels, to make it easier for possession. And they also kind of want
to shamans. Like shamans with their masks kind of thing, right?
Exactly, yes. And not even just shamans, it goes way further than simply shamanism, but shamanism is probably one of the most popular ones people know about, you know. So let's start from the beginning. So first of all, we're not talking about funny people. Comedians have always been around in many forms. A lot of people like to talk about my theory. They kind of get a bit fixated on what it means to be a fool. That's nothing to do with my work. Right. I don't care about the acting side of things. I'm purely talking about aesthetics here. Okay, the looks, the weave between aesthetics. A lot of the Gnostic types really like to get into the philosophical meaning behind clowns and how they equate to our consciousness. And I'm not about that. I'm literally talking about they looked like clowns visually with my own eyes. You can see it, and we can know what the Nephilim look like and infer it from the way these cultures dress today. because they are trying to emulate something that did exist in the past, and their cultures are based on interactions with Nephilim. So that's how we can know. So first of all, let's go back to just where the clown in the West comes from, because we're talking about clown. A clown is a very Western word. It's a British Old English word for clodhopper, basically a fool, a drunk, and it's very specific to a time period of history in the 1800s. So to say the Nephilim look like clowns, I've got to explain the context of a clown. And this goes back mainly coming, you can go back to Rome and Greece first, and just before the collapse of Rome. Okay. There's always been actors who did the Attic theatre of Aristophanes in Greece, which then evolved into Roman theatre as well. And you get characters like Stupidus, and you get mimes and mimics being around at that time, and something called a sanio from Rome, which are basically improvised mask-wearing satirists. They would make satire of rich people and influential members of the society, and they would pretend to be them, you know, and that's where we get mimes from in the modern sense, these words, these Roman words. But when Rome kind of collapsed slowly and Catholicism kind of took over in the region, you would find what would people call the Dark Ages, you know, where apparently nothing happened, but we do have some history of what was going on then, and it was mainly actors of the time were then seen as prostitutes and something dirty. It was frowned upon to be in that field of work. So a lot of these actors who were quite big out of theatre during the collapse of Rome kind of had to leave Rome to find work elsewhere, because they weren't really welcome in the capital of Christendom. You know, they weren't really allowed to be around, basically, and they weren't finding much work other than becoming jesters for courtly kings and rulers and rich people who could afford to have them and get away with breaking the law on the matter. And, you know, because it kind of became a fashionable thing during the Dark Ages for a king to have a court fool or a jester, because only the kings only the kings are allowed to have them. Who's going to question the king? Who's going to say he can't have them, you know? And it became like a commodity for the rich and wealthy to have a jester. You know, that's why that happened. But jesters are one thing. They dress in a way to look like a king. The jester's crown is a king's crown. The jester's scepter it has a jester head on it, but it's all just king costume mimicry. You know,
the king.
Exactly. You know, yeah, and a lot of kings kept them around. You know, keep themselves humble, and a lot of them kept them actually as like confidants and took advice from the jesters. You know, and some of them didn't. Some of them were treated poorly. Some of them lived very lavish lifestyles. Some of them really pushed kings to the edge and got exiled and found cheeky ways to get back into the country and get away with it. You know, because they're jesters. That was the point. You know, and there's loads of funny stories about those guys, but they're not really the focus of where the clown comes from. They're kind of one thing. They're one thing separate from all this, so we'll put them to one side for now. So these travelling actors that came out of Rome, they banded together and created little acting troupes that travelled throughout Europe, making very quick stages, just throwing up a stage in the middle of a town square somewhere in Europe, and then putting on a bunch of masks, about 10 of them, and did a quick improvised comedy show, took some money off people, and then packed up and went to the next place. This movement was called the Comédie dell'arte. And it's quite famous. The Comédie dell'arte movement is a European movement that spans 1,500 years now, you know, almost, because it started from the collapse of Rome all the way to the modern day. So we don't really know much about them during this medieval period, but they were developing their craft it was very much in the family. They picked people up along the way, kind of like the first traveling circus in a way. They're actually equated with having the first female actors as well. You know, they're quite trend setting, you know, in that respect. But what the shtick was is they had stock characters, so they would dress like things that people would recognize no matter where they went: soldiers, policemen, mayors, rich people, poor people, servants, just generic stock characters, you know. And they were all kind of zanies, as they were known. They were all comedians in their own way. They all had their own foibles and routines, which came to be expected of the stock character, but they all fundamentally wore masks as well, so the actors didn't really have to do much with the face at this time. It was all and it was funny. It was just comedy for comedy's sake, you know. But as these actors traveled throughout Europe for thousands of years, they picked up things from wherever they traveled to incorporate into the show, because they knew people would recognize it. And by the 1500s, coming out of that into the 1600s, a new character was introduced to the stock list of characters called Harley Quinn. And if you look into the history of why Harley Quinn was included, Harley Quinn is, well, the Italian name is Arlecchino, and he's basically a mashup of two things. The wild man of Northern Europe, which is a giant hairy beast with a club who has a band of demons who follows him from village to village, causing chaos during the wild hunt. A classic mythos all throughout Europe. No matter where you go, they'll have a wild man tradition, even to this day. Even to this day, they still do it. And what they do is they dress up like big, hairy, sharp teeth, wide-grinned, wild-looking monster things covered in multicolored ribbons and all sorts of stuff. And they'll have a huge party and get really drunk and dance and in some cases burn a giant version of a wild man at the end of it or whatever. Think about like any carnival.
Wow.
Think about Burning Man or Carnival. This is where these things come from. The roots are in these European traditions. Okay.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and then they would have a break at the end of it and fast for 40 days. So he kind of got Catholicized throughout the Dark Ages, and things like Lent and Ash Wednesday and, these things kind of got incorporated into it, and the Wild Man tradition got Christianized, but you can't really Christianize paganism. It is paganism through and through, and there's no getting around it, But you'll find the oldest version of the Wild Man tradition is actually in Bulgaria, and it's called the Kukuri, and it's really old. It goes. This is probably the source of why the rest of Europe has this tradition, and it's not really changed at all in thousands of years. It's still the same as it was then, and you can get examples. You can Google this. I've got thousands on my channel, but they basically dress in multicolored sequin, fractal, diamond pattern, weird clothing with big rosy red cheeks, elongated like KKK type hats covered in pom-poms, typical of a party hat you would wear at a child's birthday party. They would literally wear these enormous versions of them, and they would have pale white skin looking masks with red lips and noses on there. They look like clowns through and through, covered in bells. A lot of hair is involved as well, the hair of goats and animals. It was like a beast-human hybrid is what they were going for, with a lot of chameleon style multicolored fractal patterns. And this actually has its roots in ancient Thracian culture of the Romanian Bulgarian region, which is where you get the cults of Dionysus from, which then infiltrated Greek mythology as history went through. Dionysus was a foreign god to the Greek pantheons, but he got kind of introduced. And the story of the wild man in Europe is he's a giant with a club who has a band of demons who follows him. Dionysus, the Greek god of theatre, wine, debauchery,
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
he also travelled around with his band of merry Maenads and fauns having a wild party. It's the same character, kind of all mashed together into this weird mythos of ancient gods and wild men. So fauns are a hybrid between a goat and a man, and basically we're talking about Nephilim. We're talking about hybridized humans here and the Nephilim who can create them, or even something like Bigfoot, a big hairy beast man, of some kind. This is the Europeans' version of Nephilim. We seem to have a very hairy kind in the northern hemisphere, probably because it's cold. Maybe. I don't know. Just speculating there. But we had a very hairy kind of Nephilim. And you can see the reflections of these Wildman traditions. They're very colourful. With the way they choose to dress themselves, they've not just gone boring. Some of them do, some of them don't. But they're very bright. They've gone for multicoloured patterned ribbons or multicoloured hairs and fabrics everywhere, bright. They want to shimmer. That's what they're going for. So through these traditions, you see a reflection of something humanity dealt with in that region at some point. And they look very much like clowns. So Harley Quinn was based on Helikins, the French version of this Wildman I've just discussed. So that's the French version of this. And we have Herne the Hunter, Robin of the Hood, the Green Man. There's loads of versions of this all throughout Europe. You have the Kratos of Portugal, you got the Kukuri as well, and it's everywhere. You can't go to any part of Europe without seeing their own version of this thing, and they all have very similar looks. Anyway, Harley Quinn is a stock character who was introduced because everybody knew what the Wild Man was, no matter where they went, so why not have it as a stock character? But they also mashed it together with their Italian roots, so that's why you get the Dionysus-styled mimicry with Harlequins, the way he acts and dresses. So rather than having a club, he has a staff called the slapstick, and he would slap the stage, and he could change the scene. Like he had magical powers. He was supposed to be he was supposed to represent he was supposed to represent the mystical demonic entity, the otherworldliness. That's what he was. That was his shtick, And he wore like multicolored patched clothing on a white garb. He had a mask on which looked like a big snarling beast covered in hair. This is the proto Harley Quinn, and that develops over a few hundred years into a tight leotard with diamonds all over it, which is similar to Serpentine's.
I was just gonna ask that question. I was like, how did we get?
Yeah. But its roots are actually far more brutish and demonic, because he was supposed to be brutish and demonic. He would make jokes with his slapstick and pretend he was a phallus, you know, and he was quite crude and rude and vicious, but he could also do backflips as though he was flying. Like, and that's based on Hermes with his caduceus staff, which is Harlequin with his slapstick, and then you've got Dionysus with the Thyrsus staff with the pine cone on the end, and that's the Wildman again with his stick, and it's all kind of mashed together with this northern Teutonic Wildman tradition mashed with Mediterranean gods, and then you get Harley Quinn. So the first proto-clown demon character is Harley Quinn, and he is quite literally a model of the European version of the Nephilim. So there's a historical fact, first of all, that equates the Nephilim to clowns. So now let's talk about the development of Harley Quinn through these next 200 years into the 1800s, and where we get clown from today. So from there, Harley Quinn kind of changes a little bit. It gets a bit more boring as each century passes, and he becomes more of the love interest of Columbine, the daughter of the rich man. And these routines kind of get mastered through repetition, you know. And eventually the gag is through, and it gets popular in France and England, something called a pantomime show in the theatres, which borrows from these comédie dell'arte traditions. And France went their own way. They always had Harley Quinn, but then they had a servant of the rich man called Poirot. And the servant of the rich man, Poirot, is the typical white-faced clown with a white garb with some black pom-poms going down. And that's as far as it went in terms of dressing. Very ghostly looking, sure, quite ethereal looking. But he was supposed to just look like an Elizabethan servant. Very plain clothes, a ruff around the neck, just like a dog's body. He was nothing special. And that's the French version of...
sad.
Yeah, very sad. He was sad because because Columbine wanted Harley Quinn. Why doesn't she want me, you know? And that he was a very sad sack clown, you know? Because the gag was Harley Quinn would steal the daughter of the rich man and run away with her. And then the rich man would get his servant, clown, and they'd chase after them. And that's the gag. It's a Looney Tunes chase scene for like 2 hours. And the British theatre really mastered this, and they were hilarious, and it was really wacky and boisterous and loud. The French version was more poetic and slow, and with violins in the background, and it was all typically French, you know. It was just is what it was. So they always had that boring-looking clown, and Harley Quinn was always Harley Quinn, but Harley Quinn became more of a fancy dandy lad about town rather than a vicious demon who could have magical powers to change everything at his own whim. You know what I mean? He wasn't a feared demon anymore by this point. He was just a fancy leotard wearing lovesick fool. You know, and that void was created. Like, who's going to play the demon character anymore? Who's going to be that foil, that rough? You know, who's going to bring that edge to the theatre again? And in Britain, that was developing quite naturally, because the British version of Pedrolino, which is Poirot, Pedrolino in Italian, Poirot in French, it was clown in England. And it's still the servant of the rich man. They haven't go by different names. But he was still dressing just like a typical white Elizabethan servant, nothing special, nothing outlandish. But the British clown kind of had more of a drunken edge to him. He just cared about drinking and eating sausages. Didn't really care about what his master wanted. And when he did do what his master asked of him, he didn't do a very good job of it. And he didn't care. He did a half-assed job, you know. And that's the comedy. He was a funny clown. You know, he was actually quite funny because of his irreverent attitude. And you could see the natural switch here of this clown is a lot like the original Harley Quinn. So that switch was being made in character in the 1800s, where clown was going to replace Harley Quinn as the demonic edge. And in British theatre, this kind of got solidified with a costume change in the 1800s. So around the politics of this era, there was, in British theatre specifically, there's only really 2 theatres in London that were big, where it was all happening, and that was the Royal Theatre and the Sadler's Wells Theatre. The Royal Theatre was more for the rich people, Sadler's Wells was more for the everyday people. You know, and Sadler's Wells where it was all happening, where it was developing, where this art form was being mastered. And at the time, someone called Charles Dibdin He's a very famous Freemason of that era, very rich, powerful media mogul. He wrote so many songs for the British Navy that were sung on these ships. He was known for being a romantic playwright and someone who contributed a lot to British sailor morale during the colonization efforts of that time, you know, and the wars with the all the wars efforts of British expansionism. He was like a driving force. His music kept the soldiers going. So he's been thanked throughout history for being this amazing musician. But he's also a member of the Leicestershire Freemason Lodge number 2329, and he's actually like basically the Illuminati music industry mogul of that era, just like we have today, where the industry is controlled by the Freemasons. So it was just as controlled then; it never really changed, you know. And in true nepotistic fashion, his son Charles Dibdin Jr., you know, the same name, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He was given the position of heading up the Sadler's Wells Theatre, where all these performances were happening with these clowns and these harlequins, you know. And he took over and became the head playwright, the showrunner, and he was writing all the new plays and the shows. And he came in and made a radical change that's never happened before. He changed the costume of clown, Pedrolino, Poirot. Never been changed in like a thousand years. It's been the same white garb, and nothing different has ever been done. And this son of a Freemason comes along and suddenly just changes it into a psychedelic, fractal-looking, multicolored, monstrous thing. For no explanation, no explanations ever given. They just say, oh, you know, he just decided to mix things up a little bit to make his mark on the industry. It's like, yeah, but where does his inspiration come from specifically for that kind of design? And no one mentions it anywhere. In fact, you check the history books, you type in anything about where do clowns come from, and everyone will say, Joseph Grimaldi invented the modern image of a clown, and everyone copied him from that day forward. He is the father of all modern clowns. Joseph Grimaldi was just a young actor who was working under Charles Dibdin Jr. at that time. Now, Joseph Grimaldi had always been in the industry. He was raised in that theatre as a child. He had been working there every day of his life for a very small wage. That's kind of how it was then, you know. You stuck with a place and you kind of were a part of that family and you lived there and worked with them, you know. His father came from Italy, was also a famous performer as well, quite a brutal man, very beat his children, including Joseph, you know, very, very harsh. No. Oh, it was normal for the time, you know. It's just one of those things. But, you know, he's always been in the industry and he was very young at this time. And he had actually so Joseph Grimaldi had actually married the daughter of the guy who owns that theatre called Richard Hughes. So Richard Hughes hired Charles Dibdin Jr. to write the plays and run the place, but Richard Hughes owned the place. So Richard Hughes, his daughter marries this young actor who works for him in this stage, but then his daughter dies at childbirth. Joseph Grimaldi loses his wife and his unborn child, you know. And her dying words are to Richard, look after him, please. Look after Joseph Grimaldi. Think of poor Joe, you know. So Richard Hughes goes to Charles Dibdin, who is just hired, and says, you need to make Joseph famous. You need to give him a leading role. My daughter, I promised my daughter I'd look after him. I've hired you. You have to make him a leading role. Do what you need to do. Get him up there, you know, get him on stage. Make his life, make him rich. Look after him type of thing. So Charles Dibdin did just that by dressing him in the first new clown costume as well. And lucky for Joseph Grimaldi, he was actually one of the greatest performers ever. He was like hilarious. He smashed it out the park and he became known as the first true clown dressed that way and acting that way. And that's where we get clowns from today. All clowns today are just modelled off that original performance in that original costume, which he was dressed in then. But if you look at the costume and you look it up and down, you think that's so alien to anything we've ever understood before and to anything that came out of Europe in the past. So I did some digging. It turns out the Dibdins were highly connected to India. Charles Dibdin Sr., his father, he had a brother called Thomas who was a member of the East India Company, which was colonizing India at that time in the Navy. He had travelled back and forth to visit his brother in India many times. He was even going to move there and live there, probably to Calcutta, because that was where most of the colonisation and British people went to during that time. But his ship couldn't set sail due to bad weather, so he decided against it last minute, and he stayed in England instead. But he knew India quite well. He knew Indian iconography quite well. He was well acquainted with the area. He'd even made plays himself about Indian African slaves. It was really odd, like very odd. That's neither here nor there. He knew the place. And I do believe, as a Freemason, as a member of these mystery wisdom schools, travelling men as they are, he would have picked up a thing or two about the mythology of the region and brought with him that iconography back to England. And it seems like his son incorporated the image of a Rakshasa demon specifically. Exactly. In fact,
what kind of demon?
A Rakshasa. So Rakshasa. Rakshasa. And you'll find variations of this all through the Hindu-inspired Indic region. So Sri Lanka called them the Rakshas. In Bali, they also have the Rakshasa, but they have one called a Kalasungsang as well. And they have the Rakshasas in Thailand. Anywhere where you find Hinduism, you'll find Rakshasas. They exist. They're all there.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when I listened to one of your other podcasts with somebody else that was your co-host, and when you talked about the Thailand clowns or the Nephilim depictions, I remember that as a little girl that I would see the art depictions on the walls or what have you in Thailand, and I would see them as very clown-like but giant-like, and their word for the giants was yuk. Y-U-K, yuck. And I saw them like eating people like they were fried chicken, like a man's leg, like fried chicken. And I thought that is really macabre. Even as a little girl, I thought that is really disgusting and macabre. And now I realize that they were depicting the Nephilim clowns and what have you.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't realize that there is a Genesis 6, biblical precedent for that. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, well, you're right. They are literally the giant cannibalistic Nephilim monsters of that region. We have the Wildman in Europe, which did the same thing, by the way.
Right.
They have the Rakshasas in the Indic regions, but then they have the dragons and the Oni in the Japanese, Chinese regions, which have the similar buck tooth, big wide smile look. Big wide smile, sharp teeth going up and down, huge bulging eyes, a stub nose that goes up like this, pointy ears, wild multicolored patterns all over the face as well. It's very common, and they're usually the huge monsters, and that cannibalize people. There's loads of stories in Sri Lanka as well about them. One particular Nephilim was born of a queen. The king denied that he was his child because he hadn't been there to impregnate his wife. How did you get pregnant, Anyway, she got impregnated by a fallen angel, which seemed to be the modus operandi if you go throughout history of how it worked. The Watchers tried to impregnate people who were in positions of leadership, so they could try and heir legitimate kings of their own into positions of power. And you find for instance, in Greece, most of the Greek pantheon of gods raped the wives of kings because they were trying to birth people who had birthrights, gods, to take over the thrones. It was an agenda to do that. So Sri Lanka has their own story, except this demon basically grew up very quickly, because that seems what Nephilim did. It was thrown away as a baby, but it raised itself on eating the carcasses of something. I can't remember what it was, something really horrible. And then once it grew up, it went and just decimated the entire kingdom and ate everybody. And then I think Buddha had to turn up to pacify it or something. The story gets really weird from there.
Oh, interesting.
but they brought a lot of sickness with it as well, and it could summon demons that brought sickness onto people while also eating them all. And there's loads of mythology all throughout the Indic regions, all the way to Bali, the archipelagos as well. It's just full of these stories. And that's just their version of Nephilim, and the way they look is identical to how Gorgons look in Greek mythology as well. Same wide smile, buck teeth looking, bulging eyes, pale white skin, red hair, the lot. It's all there. It's identical, and they all have their own cultural specific stylistic aesthetical way of doing it. There's a mouthful there to explain that. Every place has their own artistic style. They all have their own style, but they're all talking about and trying to depict the same thing everywhere. And if you piece it together, it's always the same. Pale white skin, huge, big, smiling red mouth with the tongue sticking out, sharp teeth, wild, bulging eyes, and wild red hair. That's a clown. By any Western standard, that's what we call a clown today. And that's precisely what the first costume of Joseph Grimaldi in the 1800s was dressed like, because it was imported from India and put onto the British stage.
Interesting about Joseph Grimaldi, as you tell this story, it makes me think when you describe him being so great at being this clown, that I wonder, as the costume copied the Nephilim, that a Nephilim spirit became part of him.
Yeah, I would argue. I would argue.
Wonder if that was the case there, because it was so on the nose. It was so awesome.
I can believe that. I really can believe that, because dressing like a thing is no joke. And this is what a lot of my work actually is on this point, that these cultures all around the world who still have what we call ancestor spirit cultures, where they have these rituals where they dress like these psychedelic monsters, and they do these dances and do the proper sacrifices, kill animals, eat animals raw, drink the blood, all these other things still happen to this day. It's not disappeared, in Africa, in India, South America, North, any continent, actually. It doesn't matter where you go. You can go to Siberia as well, Russia, even in Europe and probably some isolated areas, Australia as well, New Zealand. There's still ancient tribal cultures that still do these things today, because they believe the ancestors are the builders of their civilization. They're not talking about grandma, your aunties and uncles, or these type of things. They're talking about ancient gods that they want to commune with to gain information and power from. And to do that, they dress like them, do the ritual to let the spirit into them. But they dress that way on purpose to channel the spirit, put it into their body, and then they let the spirit speak through their vocal cords. They channel, and then the tribe ask them stuff. How do I fix this issue with my sister? She's ill right now. Or how I need to get some money. What can I do? Or they ask for it for advice. It gives bad advice, I assume, or something. I don't know,
Probably.
But that's one way of a tribe doing it. Some of them do it, and you don't even have to be a shaman or anything special. They dress this way to get possessed by it, so they can be powerful. They want the strength the spirit gives them. They want to be able to cut themselves or get shot and not be pierced. You know what I mean? They want, because if you think about these warring tribal cultures of Africa, that's beneficial for them. They need that kind of strength, and they'll do the appropriate sacrifices and the right rituals, dressed in the right way to get that strength and let the demon in, to give them demon brute strength of a giant, whatever they can. And these are the practices that were done then, still done today. It never ended. We just don't really know about it. But when you say dressing like a thing is to channel the thing, so when Joseph Grimaldi put on this costume of a Raksa demon, he was creating a channel to the spirit realm where these things now are as disembodied, and he was, whether he knew it or not, letting them in. Joseph Grimaldi was a patsy. He didn't know any of this. He didn't know where Charles Dibdin got the costume idea from. He's just the actor. He just puts the costume on and does his job. It doesn't matter, he just plays the clown, whatever. And he had a horrible life, by the way. He died penniless and broke and brutalized.
As somebody who would be demon.
His son died of alcoholism at the age of like 30 or something like that, so he watched his only child die. He was in a loveless marriage because the love of his life died at childbirth, and these type of things, and he just got a marriage of convenience, it seems. When you read his memoirs, he didn't even care about it. She's like a footnote in his life, but even though he was with her for like 30 years, she's never mentioned anywhere. He kept getting scammed out of his money by people, and he had a horrible life, and you have to wonder what he was playing with, if that was influencing him, and he didn't even probably realize it, But the point is, the Freemason introduced that costume into the industry of the day, and it became the industry standard. And then you got what were called circuses coming into the American expansionist movement into the West. And the American circuses didn't have the same. They couldn't just have a stationary theater. They had to travel with the people who were traveling. So you got the traveling big top tent circuses that kind of developed. And the clown, as we knew it from theatre, got borrowed and put into circus shows. And the clown would usually turn up and it would entertain the crowd while the scene was being changed. That's kind of the clown's job.
Right.
And there was different types of clowns: white-faced clowns, august clowns, character clowns, and they all kind of had their own role. A lot of Laurel and Hardy stuff, the quick-witted fool and the slow to the uptake fool. That's the white-faced clown and the august clown. But you'll find through the development of these clown-type facial patterns, which get more and more Nephilim-esque, by the way, as time goes on, more and more ghostly, more and more unified as a white-skinned, red-haired monster, rather than Joseph Grimaldi's multicolored, fractal pattern monster thing, whatever you could call it. Look at the old costumes of a clown; they're terrifying, but they get more formalized with the circus. But then you have to realize circuses are a strictly Freemason affair. Even in their very inception in America, they were all run by Freemasons, every last one of them.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Wow.
Every last one of them, yeah. And they all have bros.
That makes sense.
They all have bros in their name, the Robinson bros or the Ringling bros, you know, whatever you want to call it. Johnson and Johnson, the brothers, you know. But brother is what you call a member of the fraternity. It's not about being fraternal brothers.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's the Ringling brothers of the fraternity, you know, and that was the hint to say we're part of the members. P.T. Barnum is one of the most famous showmen. The Greatest Showman is the film based on him, you know, a very generous film based on him, may I add. Right. He was a brutally horrible charlatan who abused everybody he came around just to make a quick buck, you know what I mean? And he made the Freak Show. And he's the one that created that and got it involved with the circus, because he used to own a museum prior to this, before he got involved in the circus game, scamming people, making stuff up, claiming to have a real mermaid, where he sewed a monkey's head onto the body of a fish, for example. You know what I
mean? Well, isn't he the one that coined the phrase, "There's a sucker born every minute"?
No, but...
Or it was like that.
It is. This is a comment. I only learned this because I had to do the read for the book, you know, and to get the research. But it was actually the judge presiding over a specific case involving him that said this. And this case is actually really fascinating because it involves giants. It involves giants, funnily enough. So at this time, there was another guy going around claiming he had found the fossil of a giant. And people were going to come and see it, you know what I mean? He was going to make money off showing the come see the giant mummy, you know. P.T. Barnum heard this and made his own out of paper mache and fake stuff, okay? And said, no, come see my giant instead, you know, I've got the real one. And that guy who had the supposed real giant sued P.T. Barnum for damages and losses, because he was taking away all his business. And that went to court. So, and obviously... people say the original giant was a hoax anyway. And P.T. Barnum's hoax was a hoax based on that hoax. You know what I mean? So when it got to court, the judge just threw it out. And he said, this is ridiculous. The whole thing is just stupid. There's a sucker born every minute. So that's where that that's where that comes from. Yes. So P.T. Barnum got I think it was like one
credited for it.
It was one of the prosecutors or the judges presiding over the case. It was one of the commentaries on it. So it wasn't P.T. Barnum himself who said it, but he's one of the people who's dealing with the whole issue of the court proceedings. I just made a quote somewhere about that. But it's just stupid, isn't it? Like, and that's the type of guy he was. He was just pulling cons everywhere and making money off it very quickly. And he got into the circus biz very late in life. He was like 60 or something. And he spent most of his youth running like lottery scams and freak show scams and all these other scams left, right, and centre. And it turns out he's actually a member of the Oddfellows, which is a very powerful Masonic order. Presidents, kings, and prime ministers are members of the Oddfellows. And King George V was a member of it. Winston Churchill was a member of this. Ulysses S. Grant was a member of this. Like, you go look at the list. Charlie Chaplin was also a member of this group. You go look at the list of people who were Oddfellows. It's all influential leaders of countries and actors. Why are those two mixed together in a fraternity?
That's interesting.
Very odd. Is it possible they were all actors, including those people who played roles as leaders and prime ministers and kings on the world stage? Is it possible they're hinting that they're all just members of the same fraternity? They all just act a role on the world stage, and we believe they're actually who they say they are, but once that character dies, they might come back on the stage as a different character for all we know, the world stage. But the Oddfellows, P.T. Barnum was a member, and it's no secret that their logo is 3 rings locked together. And it was P.T. Barnum who created the 3-ring circus.
The 3-ring circus.
So circuses are quite literally Freemasonic rituals done in front of the public on a grand scale. So let's,
Wow.
if you don't know this already, it's you can go and find this out. They're not hiding what I'm about to tell you, but the only person who's allowed to wear a top hat in a Freemason lodge is the Worshipful Grand Master, the leader of the lodge. He's the only one allowed to wear a top hat. It can be any hat. It's traditionally a top hat, though, but it can be any hat. Because the hat
Wow.
and this is what they say, it represents the crown of Solomon. And only the king is allowed to wear the crown, and his subjects aren't allowed to wear a hat out of respect. Now, Solomon wasn't wearing top hats, first of all. He was wearing a crown, but but the crown, the top hat does represent the crown of Solomon. And these Freemasons are obsessed with Solomon. They're obsessed with rebuilding the temple. During this time period in America, there was loads of buildings just being erected everywhere that looked like Solomon's temple. There's money all over the place, and they were going nuts over it. And 10 circuses got together. And you can go find the newspaper clippings advertising this. 10 brilliant shows blended into one to create a show called The King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And that's why, because they're all Freemasons and they love King Solomon. And you realise, it's just a show with a ringmaster, and the ringleader, the Lord of the Ring, King Solomon with the top hat. He is the worshipful Grand Master of a lodge, just in a circus setting. So the ringmaster represents Solomon. He's wearing the crown, and he is the master over the ring and orchestrates the ritual of the circus to control the clowns. Well, King Solomon used his ring to orchestrate the demons to build his temple. It's the same analogy, just metaphorically transferred into a public occulted setting. So the public go to these shows and pay to see the ritual. They don't know they're seeing a ritual which is identical to the ones in the lodges. They think they're going for a fun time for the family, whatever, But realistically, any Freemason who saw these shows during the time was like, wow, I normally see this on a tiny scale in my little lodge. This is amazing. Look how huge they've done this. It's a spectacle with hundreds of people and actors involved. Every costume made by the same company who makes all the costumes for the Freemason lodges. The little bibs and aprons and little medallions they wear. Well, it's the same company that made all of them, made all the costumes for this spectacular show. Okay, it was all a Freemason affair.
That's fascinating.
As time has gone on, circuses die out. The clown moves to the TV, other media forms. Things change a little bit, but Shriners today still run all the traveling circuses in America. They still own them all. They still run them all. And every Shriner sect, which is a step above Freemasonry. You have to be a Freemason of the highest level, then you can become a Shriner. Then I think it's like 13 levels or a few levels there. They all have a clown sect. Every one of them. Every shrine has a section where they dress like clowns within it, go around in the little cars, you know what I mean, and entertain the kids in the Shriner hospitals to raise money for charity, so-called. But you have to wonder what a supposed Arabic Muslim-themed fraternity is doing, dressing like Western clowns. It's because they are just a continuation of the same serpent worship mystery school cults from the antediluvian age that communicated and worked with the Nephilim. They've just found a new way of doing it today, publicly, without the public realizing it. They can dress like their gods, channel their gods that they work with, the demons, and the public are none the wiser. They can go to children, scare them half to death, dressed like a clown in these hospitals where they're dying, feed the demon all that energy that's in them, and it looks like they're just doing a bit of fun for the kids, right? It's really sadistic and dark when you think about it. And then
Absolutely.
But that's not all. Then you go above shrining, there's another level, and it's called the Royal Order of the Jesters. And you can't be a jester unless you're invited. You have to be invited to be a member, and they only let 13 people in a year. But to be a jester within Freemasonry is the highest honor. Why? Why is it the highest honor to be a jester of all things? Because it's a clown.
They're mocking Christ.
It's the rank. Well, not only is it mocking the king and rulership over all of humanity, but it's a clown. They get to be like the Nephilim themselves, and they get the title of that, basically. Okay. It's you have to understand spiritual warfare.
That's amazing.
There's a hierarchy to all of this. Freemasonry, these old men in these clubs, they're just physical foot soldiers for the spiritual bosses they have, which are the Nephilim. And even those Nephilim who they communicate with and work with and take orders from, even they answer to their parents, the Watchers. Like, there's a hierarchy to all of this. And even the Watchers answer to Azazel and Lucifer and the rest. It goes higher and higher and higher to the generals and the ranks. But the Freemasons communicate with them by dressing like a clown, just like these ancestor spirit worship cultures do all over the world. The only difference is in the West, it's hidden and occulted from us. That's the only difference. We don't know that that's what dressing that way does. Everywhere else does. We're just ignorant. And that's it. Right. So there you go. I'll stop. Sorry, go ahead.
My grandfather on my mom's side was a Shriner.
Oh wow!
So, yeah,
you have to look into that. Yeah. Well, don't forget as well. A lot of these, it's the highest members that usually know what's really going down. You can be members of these fraternities and not have a clue what's really going on half the time as well. So I'm forgiving. I don't just say they're all the same.
I didn't know him. He died when my mom was 10.
Yeah, so, but they're definitely heavily involved with clowns for some reason. Shriners love clowns. Yes. Like it's their. Yes. It's like they've been given control of the circuses. You go deal with that, guys, because like I said, circuses are kind of old now. It's become more modernized. The clown's on the television instead, and it's popularized through things like the Joker, for example. Is the most mainstream version I could think of clowns.
Well, I was thinking about that Joker because that Heath Ledger that played the Joker, he actually meditated, and people suspect, and I think it's probably right on, that he was possessed by a demon. Because the actors that were in it, they talk about on set, he never went out of character. And also I've been in theater, and I can tell you from experience that costumes do really change you.
Oh yeah, it's actually quite common. I've seen videos of people who put on masks and completely look like they're being possessed in these just training for theater, just training for like a theater troupe. You know what I mean? Just in the West somewhere. And
I've seen that too.
And you think of the film, The Mask. It's literally about that. A guy puts on the mask of the trickster god.
Such a weird movie. I watched that again recently. It's like, this is a terrible, horrible, evil film. How about cosplay? Cosplay for anime.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's just fun. No, it's invoking all the demons.
This is
Japanese anime.
This is the trick today. So dressing like the thing is to take in the thing. You dress like it to be possessed by it. That's what the practice really is. Some cultures do it, and it's called being apotropaic. That's a fancy word for saying I'm dressing this way to scare away evil spirits or to confuse them, so they don't attack us.
Right.
But I don't. I think you need to give the Nephilim a bit more credit for its due. They're not idiots. They've been around for thousands of years in the spirit world. Right. They know a fake when they see one. You're not scaring them. You're not scaring them away if you dress like them or jingle your bells enough while dressed in a hairy outfit or something.
You're just attracting them.
You're just bringing them in. Yeah. And that's
You're fulfilling their narcissistic tendencies.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But most places know that, and they dress like the thing to be possessed. They want to be possessed. That's the end goal of dressing that way. That's the purpose. A few places don't do it that way, and I'd say they're ignorant and fooled, because they can't both be right. Are they scaring them away, or are they being possessed by them? Well, if these people are clearly being possessed by them, they're probably right, and dressing like them isn't going to scare them away, is what I would say. So if you think about it in terms of modern Western terminology and how Freemasonry basically sculpted the idea of a clown and injected it into the West, they want people dressing that way, because it opens up more channels for the spirits to get to our world. And you think about something like Halloween, fun for the kids, okay? Well, that's during Samhain, right? The old Celtic tradition, which is when the spirit realm...
I don't do Halloween anymore.
Yeah, but that's when the veil is thinnest, supposedly, between the spirit realm and our realm. You know, a very thin veil. It's like kind of connected during that time, and you can almost get through, you know what I mean? They're so close to each other. And to pierce that veil, you just dress like a clown, and you can let it more readily in. And that's the time of year they always popularize the clown in media, so they can get more people dressing like it every year. So there's always a new Joker reboot of some kind, or a new actor who's dressed. There's always the
Joker. That's right. Yeah.
There's always a new it. It, for example, Stephen
The It
King's.
Clown.
yeah.
It's the same thing. It's an interdimensional monster that manifests as
Yes.
looks like a clown, and it feeds off the fear of children. Comes around every 27 years, you know what I mean? Which is kind of a weird mythos, but that's there nonetheless. And it is quintessentially a Nephilim with a big wide grin smile that opens up. It's also a spider demon of some kind. It's like a hybrid monster, I don't know. But that gets popped. That's just had a reboot, and then another reboot, second version of that, because they need to keep it fresh in people's minds, so people keep dressing that way every year. More and more people, you know, and it's getting ridiculous. You know,
Yes.
Clown murderers and killers are getting more popular as well in the media as well. There's I did a video recently, just about the last decade, and I've gone through all the media.
I watched that. That was really good.
In 10 years alone, they've really hyped up the clown massively, and they're getting more and more people in cosplay settings to dress this way as well, because it opens up more channels. It opens up more channels. That's all it's doing, and this is not a new practice. I mean, if you go to the 80s and look at the music scene, they've always been doing this. Look at you know, just
Twisted Sister.
Any of them. Look at Kiss for
Twisted Sister. Kiss, right?
Yeah. Kiss, for example. Sure. David Bowie. Cyndi Lauper. All glam rock musicians. Every single one of them. Right. The secret of the music industry, and it's still to this day, is not to have talent. It's to dress like a psychedelic, multicolored, fractaled, pale-skinned, red-haired clown monster, and you will be elevated. The Freemasons will choose you. They will put you on a pedestal. They will tell the world, this person's amazing, you need to idolize them. They'll play your music on repeat on the radio, because they want more people looking at you dressed that way and thinking, that's what I need to do to be like them. And then they'll dress like a clown fractal monster and join the industry and do the same thing. And it's a self-perpetuating thing, which is opening more and more portals, getting more and more people dressing this way, making it easier for the Nephilim to get in and out of people. And, you know, there's a whole movement right now, which happened over the past 5 years. The extreme left-wing liberal movement, we'll call it. I like to call them the multicolored collective, just to get past the algorithm, because you're not allowed to talk about these people without losing everything that you hold dear. But you have to wonder about what the spirit is behind this movement and in these people when they're dehumanizing themselves with body modifications, piercings, bright colored hair, wild clown makeup, you know, mixing their identity with other identities, if I can say that and infer what that means in the most PC way possible. Like, these people are mentally ill, and we're supposed to encourage it and clap them along while they what's the word, defile themselves in the worst possible ways and mutilate themselves at the same time, you know, and they look like clowns, do they not? And they're idolizing our culture currently, and you have to wonder, what's the spirit behind this? Is that the spirit in them manifesting physically and making the vessel they've possessed look more like them? Or is it that they've dressed that way and let it in and become more like the demon? Who knows? Does life imitate art? Does art imitate life? It's probably both. But this is this is the game. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, and they also, not all of them. I'm trying to be political because I'm a blunt person, and so now I'm trying to guard. So you may remember there was the Multicolor people did a song that "We're Coming for Your Children." Do you remember that?
I do.
So that, yes, that kind of lines right up with
clowns. It's for the kids, right?
Yeah, that's for the kids. And
hello, drag queen story hour. Hello.
Children.
Yeah, well, they're a protected class. You're not allowed to talk about them without losing everything you hold dear. So don't talk about them, please. Don't. We know we all know what we're talking about. All right.
Can we all please protect the YouTube channel too? I just realized we're live on YouTube, and you have an amazing audience here. And how have you maintained your YouTube channel?
By not talking about them directly. That's how you do it. So I came up with the term. I came up with the phrase "the multicolored collective," and you all know what I mean when I say that.
Yes.
Okay. You all and just think of clowns are also very colorful, and let's just break down the costume of a clown.
And they have blue hair or red hair.
Oh, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. In 2023, actually, you can go find an Elle article on this. The runway fashion of 2023 is clown themed. This is the highest end fashion right now. Clowns. Seriously, they're walking down runways dressed with clown noses, wigs, clown costumes, big shoes, all of it, and it's called clowncore. There's a huge movement on TikTok right now dedicated to clowncore fashion, and the youth, the millennials, and the Gen Xers and Gen Z, should I say, are all in on this. Not all. It's a sub community that's growing quite big, and kids are dressing like clowns more than ever. And what you see on the runways is a bit wild, but what waters down to the outlets is like a subdued version. But still, they are literally going to start dressing us like clowns because the only
it's already happening. Trust me, I tried to go shopping and I was like,
the only clothes we'll have available to buy are Harley Quinn inspired clown costumes.
Speaking of which, when I was 12 and I didn't know better, I dressed up as a Harlequin clown, and I put the white face and the red cheeks and red lips, and it was to me, I thought it was cute. It was a black and white and red outfit, but a lot of people don't realize like you talked about, the origin of all that. Like if somebody were to come up to me, hey, did you know that this is a replica of, the giants from Genesis 6 or whatever, I would be like totally blown away. That was before I was a Christian, of course. But there's so many different things like clowns and elves and fairies and gnomes and whatever. I mean, if people knew their origins, they would be totally just mind blown. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, the Nephilim didn't necessarily act like clowns. And the clown costume we have today is a caricature of the real thing. It's not exactly what they looked like, but they took features from Nephilim and amalgamated it together into something we call a clown. So if you break down the clown, for example, we can start with the wig. It's usually red hair. No matter where you go, you can always find that's the most common descriptor of encounters with Nephilim. Even the city car and the northern Duwamish peoples of the plains of America and these tribes who dealt with the mound builders, they always described them as tall, pale-skinned, big teeth, cannibalistic, and red-haired. It's the most common descriptor you can find, even from modern ones. In fact, there's a woman who's going around who's a part of that same tribe who dealt with the city car tribes and smoked them out in a cave in Lovelock Cave. She actually still travels today with what's called a mourning dress, which is weaved from the hair of the giants that were slain, that is passed down through generation. Wow. And that's where they used to scalp the heads off the Nephilim they slayed and use the huge red long hair to make mourning dresses with, which they would wear as a sign of killing a giant, and she still has hers to this day, and it's red haired. It's this red haired thing like that's been weaved into like a dress of some sort, like a big sheet, and that's just, if it wasn't red, it was gold hair. It was golden, shining hair. Even the Tuatha De Danann, which basically Nephilim that invaded the Irish regions of the UK and became the fairies, they are pale-skinned, red-haired giants. That's basically what they were, and a very beautiful-looking version. Maybe not as reptilian as the Rakshasas, but just like any serpent. Because don't forget, their parents were probably seraphim, which are fiery flying serpents, the closest to God, the one that sang Holy, Holy, Holy around the thrones of God, the seraphim class angels. I believe he trusted them to be the watchers, and they betrayed that trust. Some of them did. Not all of them, obviously. But these seraphim class dragons, they're the ones who mixed with the daughters of Cain and created hybrid human dragon offspring. You mix a dragon with a human, you get something that looks like the Rakshasa demons, which are very colourful with wide serpentine mouths that can dislocate to eat their prey like snakes can, for example. Multicoloured patterned skin like reptilian skin, serpent frills like the lizard of Australia, where it has that frill that can open up like a clown, wears a big ruff around the neck as well, does it not? The big mention that. Clowns have big red smiles with big red lips. Now imagine a human with lips, but suddenly you can extend that smile out. It would look pretty weird, right? And that's what clowns paint themselves as, big red lip, wide mouth things, The crosses on the eyes of clowns you see very common, the big slit. That's a predator trait. Only predators have a slit pupil because it gives them a better field of focus.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and snake. Yeah, snakes can have them, felines can have them. I think one form of canid has them, which is a fox. Dogs tend not to have them for some reason, and one bird has them in the world. It's very rare, but it's predators specifically. Big cats have them as well, like tigers and stuff like that. But reptilians, very common in the reptilian world. because it gives them a better field of focus on a flat plane. You'll find actually prey have horizontal slit pupils going sideways because it gives them a broader scope of the land to see predators coming. But predators have a slit because it gives them a pinpoint focus of distance. So anyway, clowns with the slits is because they are literally copying predators that used to eat us. Like, what do you think they get the film Predator, for example, the film that are hunting humans? These are the Nephilim. That's what they did. They cannibalized us, and that's probably why we're scared of clowns today when we see them, because it's in our DNA. These things used to hunt us, eat us. It's probably built into our consciousness, hardwired into us to when you see something like that, run. Like, it's built into us. We were the prey, you know. And clowns, slits, predators. But if it's a cross, that's just a comic symbol for something that's dead. Crosses in the eyes represents a dead thing in cartoon caricature language. These are the undead spirits. These are the Rephaim. These are the dead ones that were resurrected and after the flood. You know, these are the Nephilim. They are now disembodied spirits. They are demons today, you know. So that's just tongue-in-cheek references. That's all the clown makeup ever references. The red nose is actually a very real condition called a rhinophyma. Rhinophymas develop primarily in very pale-skinned people. It's called the curse of the Celts. It was a very northern European issue. And what happens is, if you get extreme end stage rosacea, it's called. That's what they call it. It's like the worst possible rosacea you can get. Not everybody gets it, but rosacea causes blotchy red patches to appear everywhere all over the body, like polka dots, on a very pale white-skinned person. The Nephilim were the palest, likely because of the mark of Cain was said to be pale white skin from the book of Lamech of Cain. Maybe that's where they got that from, I don't know. But having that pale skin meant they were prone to rosacea, which means they were prone to developing huge bulbous red noses called a rhinophyma. And it's a genetic condition. It's not caused by drinking too much alcohol. That has nothing to do with it. So that's a common misconception. People who get those big bumpy red massive noses, it's purely genetic, and it's purely primarily a white skin problem. And the Nephilim had the whitest skin, so it wouldn't surprise me if they also developed very big red noses as they got older, just like a clown knows today. Yeah, and the rest. I mean, most of our own corruptions today in our DNA, people have argued maybe because of these Nephilim. Who knows? I mean, I'm not here to say that if that's true or not, but who knows? You know, that might be why we have it, because they may have trickled it down into us somehow. I don't know, but I do believe they would have had big, wide serpent smiles, pale white skin on the face primarily, with these big bulbous red noses that got bigger as they got older, and they would have had huge eyes, massive serpent reptilian bulging eyes. Any depiction of them, like the Rakshasas, wild, massive bug bulging eyes just protruding out the face. And if you look at a clown makeup, they put very high brow ridges. They paint a big black ridge like a curve above the eyebrow, don't they? And it makes and when the actor closes his eyes, it looks like he has a big, enormous circle eye instead, you know. And they often shade that in blue or something. So when he closes his eyes, it looks like it has big, blue, glowing eyes. It's a caricature of a Nephilim feature. Mention the ruffle around the neck, a distinctly reptilian thing. Multicolored fractal patterned clothing is serpent skin. Serpents and reptiles are very colourful, psychedelic creatures. Big gloves and big shoes, giants. Tiny hats and tiny umbrellas, you're like a giant holding them. It's just all there to accentuate Nephilim features. Stilts, clowns on stilts, making them look like a giant. Many clowns coming out of a tiny little car, for example. Well, not only do they look like giants in comparison to the car, another Nephilim reference, but it's said when a body has many demons in it, you know, it's legion, right? You know, a guy could have a legion of demons in him.
The Nephilim demons,
yeah. Well, a car represents the human body in dream speak, dream symbols. It's a symbol for the if you dream about if you dream about a car breaking down, usually you might have broken your leg in waking life or something, and you can no longer travel through life how you once used to be able to. The car is symbol for body. Do you get what I mean? The body has broken, so the car breaks down in your dream and you're stuck somewhere. I can no longer move how I used to or how I need to. I can't get to where I need to be. It's probably because in waking life, you probably have an illness or something. You're currently in a hospital bed, and you've broken your legs or something. That's usually when you have those type of dreams. Well, in terms of symbolism in a circus, many clowns coming out of a car is many demons coming out of a human body. It's symbolic. It's all just symbols to make fun and trivialize a very serious thing. Everything about a clown is just a caricature of the Nephilim. Everything.
Well said, for sure. I have to insert this. I had a dream that I was in a vehicle and I felt safe and secure in this vehicle. And then all of a sudden, the dream went south. I saw this demon like ripping up the roof and he was trying to get in. And that's interesting that you mentioned that the car is a symbolic of one's body. So that represented a demon trying to enter my body through the dream.
Yeah.
So that is very interesting.
I only know this because I had my own dream where the car broke down, and by chance I randomly searched to find out what it meant. And I wasn't looking for those silly dream interpretations like wealth is coming your way soon or something. I mean, no, as symbol, what does car mean? You know, and it means the human body. Any vehicle, really. Any vehicle is a representation of your vehicle, the thing you use to traverse the world with. So I only knew that by chance. So when I saw this clown thing, I was like, that's just a bunch of demons coming out of a body. That's Leash. He's kind of. I was already kind of.
That's a heavy revelation right there, sir. Well done.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, any questions? Because I can go on for hours about this, guys. Do you have any thoughts you're thinking of or questions?
I have one question to quote Aliens, where do I shoot? Because whenever I see clowns or I think about clowns, I'm just like, ugh, just get it. It's like having a demon in your dream. You just want to strangle them, get rid of them. What can we do against this evil? It just feels it's so pervasive. As you're speaking, you're reminding me when I was a kid, there was a clown in local access TV in Fort Wayne, Indiana. When I was just 7 years old, I was on this clown show, and none of us knew what it was. We were just, it's the happy local clown show. I just looked him up. Of course, he's from Barnum Bailey's, trained in all this. He just recently died. Poor guy. It's just you just ruined my childhood. What do I do? I need to get it back. What do we do, brother? How have you found overcoming in this area? You're the master hunter here.
Well, just remember, just don't dress like a clown. First of all, I've told you now.
Darn.
Just stop doing that. If you are doing that, I've told you, just go and look at these other cultures that dress this way, and you'll realize they're doing it to be possessed by demons. And ignorance of the spiritual law doesn't make you immune to it, unfortunately. And if just because you don't know it does that, doesn't mean you're not going to be affected by it. So I'd recommend. Avoiding that, okay? And I probably would avoid having icons in your home. Like, people collect a lot of figures or models of Joker, for example, to get obsessed with that character, or clowns, and people get glass clowns in their house made of a specific Italian glass blower. They're obsessed with them. They're all over the internet, and like. I had a family friend. My mum and dad had a family friend when I went to visit, and they had them in the bathroom just staring at you while you're on the toilet. And it's like, what is this doing here? Who's into this type of thing? But I would get any icons out of your home that's clown related, and I wouldn't dress like clowns first of all, just because it really is going to open up a channel. That's the point. That's what they're for, and that was always what they were for. Just because we didn't know that and we were lied to about their origins doesn't change anything. But other than that, you have to remember as well, the Nephilim are a defeated enemy. Okay,
exactly.
They are dead. They are dead. They're disembodied. They're trapped in the fractal matrix. They're stuck in the plumbing of reality. They don't have a body like we do. We're the prize. They want a body that they no longer have, okay? And they'll do anything they can to get back into one. And all we can do is block that as much as possible. Put on our armor of God, that's right, exactly. Call in the name of Jesus. In his authority, we have the power to cast these things out. So this is like, once you come to this truth, they'll probably stay away from you because you're too much of a risk for them. They want people to be ignorant. They would rather the person who they're possessing doesn't know they're being possessed. That's optimal for them. So they can stay in there for as long as possible, influence the vessel as much as they can to do the things they want to feel and experience. Okay, and that's why a lot of people possessed by demons do sinful things and gluttonous things and horrible things, because the demon within them is what wants them to do it. Yeah, they want them to do it because that's what the demon wants to experience, and they'll use your senses to do it. They live vicariously through your mouth, your lips, your nose, your ears, your eyes, your skin, your fingertips. They're using you to feel. So get them out first of all, call in the name of Jesus, cast them out. Fast is a great way of doing that. Prayer and fasting is probably the best way. Get to know Jesus, read the word, get saved. It's quite simple, and that's the first step in spiritual warfare. That's your weapon, that's your armor. And then from then on, again, don't dress like them, don't have icons in your home anymore, and expose the darkness where it is. And that's the issue, that they have no power once they've been exposed. And that's all I'm trying to do here, is a know your enemy situation. How do you even know what you're fighting against if you don't even know what they really look like? Everyone's throwing up pictures of the Nephilim here and there, in the past, where they're really tall, tanned men with huge pecs and long brown hair, looking like looking like Conan, looking like a really big hench human.
They really are.
And that's not what they looked like.
Those are the pictures that you get.
You're looking for the wrong thing if you think that's what they looked like. You're missing it. And what I'm showing is they've been right in front of you this entire time. They're living in our society, being channeled by people all the time, and it's done through clown imagery. The word we use, clown, drop it. Drop any associations you have with unicycle riding, honking, silly clowns. Okay, that's not the people who dress like this in these serious cultures in Africa and India. They don't call them clowns; they call them their gods. They're very serious.
Right.
They're not a joke. Okay, they are not jokes to these people. They're extreme. They're biting the heads off of chickens and drinking the blood to feed the god within them. Dressed like a clown. Okay, that's the point.
Wow.
We just call it clown because that's the word we've got for it. And we've been the clown is a trivial thing to us. We're not supposed to.
What about mimes? Are mimes okay?
No, same thing.
Oh, no.
Mimes are an extension of Poirot. Poirot was like the first mime, proto-mime, the French clown, the sad sack clown we mentioned earlier with the white face paint. He was one of the first clowns to drop the mask and use his facial expressions to express emotion. And that's where we get French mimes from as an iteration of Poirot. It's still rooted in being a clown. And if you actually think of a mime, it's a silent black and white fractaled ghost who's stuck in a realm it can't get out of.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's why they do the box, that they're in this wall.
It's a Nephilim spirit trapped in the disembodied realm, unable to communicate.
That's why everybody hates mimes.
Yeah, so it can't talk to you, can it? It's silent. It can't.
So it's okay to wish for their demise. Okay, good.
No, but the thing is,
I have a joke.
Go ahead.
If you shoot a mime, do you need a silencer?
That's good.
That
was a dad joke.
I'm sorry, that was
what's
bad.
Scary? I don't know if it's scary now,
know.
but I was remembering when I was a kid, our family practitioner that we went to, he collected clowns and had pictures of clowns all over his doctor's office, and one of the exam rooms was filled with clowns. I hated going into the clown room.
I bet.
But yeah, that's just and now I'm like, oh wow, that was probably not a good thing. And he was Christian, man.
Well, most people don't know. This is the thing. I'm not saying everybody who dresses like a clown or everybody has. They don't know this. No one. No one's
just sad.
Yeah, they're not supposed to know. Most people think clowns are what they're supposed to be. A bit of fun for the kids. Something that makes kids laugh. But studies have actually been done. Like, kids don't like clowns.
Kids are scared of clowns.
Terrifying for a lot of them.
And
Ronald McDonald.
Oh yeah, that's a big one when you think about it, isn't it? Like, that's a huge mascot as well. But the thing is, kids maybe did like clowns maybe in the 50s, perhaps. But even then, it was a bit touch and go. You get a lot of photos from the past where like clowns are holding children and the children are screaming with fear, tears rolling down the eyes, like pushing away from this monster that's holding them, like, please don't kill me. And the parents are in the back, and the parents are like next to them laughing like, oh, how cute. Isn't that cute? It's like, what kind of like trauma did these people have to go through in these generations to think that is cute? I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
Wow. I was watching this deliverance of
Right.
this lady, and she had this abject dread fear of clowns. And believe it or not, this Christian prayer warrior deliverance minister was casting out that demon of this fear of clowns, and she was
Wow.
manifesting and everything. And I'm like, wow, where did that come from? Maybe some sort of prior trauma from clowns, from Ronald McDonald, who knows?
Maybe. Well, again, I think it's deep rooted into a lot of us because clowns is an odd fear. It's up there actually on the list of fears.
Right.
It's really common,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you
Oh,
get
sure,
you
sure.
get like
Mm-hmm.
snakes, heights, fire. Maybe some people,
Mm-hmm.
things like you can understand. Like I get why people are scared of spiders.
Right.
I get it. Like it's
Right.
a predator prey response thing again. I understand why
Right.
people are scared of heights.
Sure.
It's not irrational,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll die if you fall. I get it, But clowns, why is that so high on the list?
Right.
Clowns, and people say, oh well, and this is the odd thing. I track it every year, like clockwork. The mainstream news articles at every source, all at once, release "Why are people scared of clowns?" article. Okay, and they always do this every year. I don't know if it's to reinforce people thinking about clowns, or if it's to try and
Yeah.
or if it's trying to cover for the truth, and you have to come up with a
Mm-hmm.
science,
Right.
to explain things
Mm-hmm.
away. And they say, oh well,
Mm-hmm.
it's the uncanny valley thing. It's almost human, but it's not quite, and that just freaks us out, And that's basically every year they do that. They release that
Right.
article like clockwork everywhere to try and reinforce. The only reason you're scared of clowns is because your brain can't quite comprehend what it's looking at, and it freaks you out a little bit, And I'm explaining this thing here now, and I'm like, well, if you think about it, these things used to eat us. Well, of course we're going to
Mm-hmm.
naturally be scared of something that looks like that if
Mm-hmm.
we used to be the
Right.
prey. It's kind of like not in an
Right.
evolutionary sense, but in a micro evolutionary sense, in a
Mm-hmm.
short term thing. It's possible we've
Right.
adapted, and now it's in us to naturally just be like, okay, back away from this thing, stay still, don't let it, if we don't move, it might not get us.
Right.
Fear responses, natural fear responses to something we should be scared of. Just like when you see a spider, those things are venomous,
Right.
poisonous, and we're naturally, a lot of people probably died from them, and we've learned
Oh, sure.
to be suspicious
Mm-hmm.
of bright colored things.
Mhm.
Bright colors are basically
Yes.
what they warn us for in nature.
Poison.
Poison
Mm-hmm.
is dangerous. Stay away from the bright
Right.
coloured thing. And the
Mhm.
Nephilim were the most colourful. They were psychedelic looking monsters, dragon human hybrids. They were not
Wow.
Good
human
point.
looking things, And maybe as like the generations got watered down, they got more and more human like, but they were always
Right.
maintained a bit shorter each time, a bit less
Mm-hmm.
wide of a mouth, a bit less colourful maybe. But the original OG, pure, half angel, half human Nephilim, they would have been a sight to behold. Absolutely terrifying monsters in the
Amazing.
truest form, And I
Wow.
think we remember that. Collectively, I think we remembered
Wow.
that.
The lady on
Interesting.
Eyes on the Right did a thing about clowns.
Yeah.
And she posited that the red was like from them eating, cannibalizing. Yeah, that's where the
Yeah.
bright
That was actually
red.
that was my original first theory on the matter, and that's what I
Yeah.
thought. It looks like, imagine a child eating
Yeah.
eating spaghetti
Right.
bolognese. You know what I
Right.
mean? You just see your face gets smeared in it, and like your nose would be red, and your mouth would be red too, because they're just drinking and eating people's carcasses and stuff. So yes, it could be a reference to the blood around the mouth, but I also think if you get a lizard human hybrid, you get a big wide
Mm-hmm.
mouth lizard with red lips. It would look pretty
Mm-hmm.
weird. It would look pretty strange,
Yeah.
Right.
It could
Right.
just be that as well, but the cannibalistic nature is a good symbolic reference to the big
Yeah.
because the clown makeup really goes overt with it, and it covers the entire section of the cheeks as well sometimes.
Right.
It seems a bit excessive.
Yes.
It seems a bit excessive to just be lips.
Right.
Yes.
So maybe it is a
Right.
reference
Right.
to eating blood,
Who
drinking blood,
knows?
yeah.
I know
Yeah.
at Walgreens, they had this fundraiser for, I think, children. I forget what it was, but it was the Red Nose Day. So if you donated $1, they'll give you a red nose, and to show your solidarity with whatever fundraiser effort that was, I forget what it was, that you would wear the red nose. And so I didn't know any better, so I took a picture of me with the red nose, and I got all these likes, and they thought it was funny and what have you. And gosh, there's so many. If only we knew the origins of these seemingly benign things, we would be just flabbergasted.
Well, yeah, every year the Red Nose Day is a big thing in the UK and in Canada. I think you do it in America as well. I think it's everywhere now in the Western Hemisphere. It's to usually raise money for children in need or
Right.
for starving children in Africa or something. It's a general fundraiser type event, isn't it? But that's what they do every year. They get a lot of people to dress like a clown again, and it's a ritual.
Interesting.
It's a very subtle, hidden invocation ritual. They're getting people to dress like the thing to open up more channels for the thing. And we're just oblivious to that. We're just oblivious to that's what's actually happening. And no more. That's all I will say. Like the history is evident when you actually look into it. And I think I've laid a decent enough case to say I'm not just making this up for a bit of fun, you know. Again, and the funny thing is, I don't care about clowns. I'm not the guy who's ever obsessed over them growing up. They've never even been a thought until that day in 2016, and even now, when I'm not writing the book on the thing or doing these talks, I'm not thinking about them, and like I'm not.
That's good to know.
It's odd. Like I don't really care about clowns, but I've somehow inadvertently ended up being some kind of expert on them, and here I am. Like it's kind of, but
you're bringing a very important puzzle piece to all these researchers that have done so much throughout the years. I was right there from the beginning of the fringe Christian movement, bringing out the Nephilim, and listening to Derek Gilbert and friends when they were just doing this with camcorders, and the Future Quake show, you know, before Canary Cry. And so, but nobody's really specialized in the clown aspect. And you just, my friend, you have just awakened all of myself and all my spiritual warrior friends to go clown hunting. So we're really excited about that. In the spirit, of course. Don't do anything violent.
Yeah. Leave the people dressing like clowns alone. They just don't know what they're doing. They're ignorant. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
So I don't need to tell you the location of the dell'arte School of Clowns in Humboldt County.
Is it? Well, you might have to actually go ahead.
Yeah, there's a.
What
well,
did
you said
say?
you were going to.
Where is this place?
It's in Humboldt County, California.
It's funny because the creepy clown sightings of 2016, that's actually the first time that's happened, you know. In 1983 in Boston, Massachusetts, the same thing did happen. And it was actually a lot more sinister, actually. They were traveling around in vans, going up to parks and telling kids to get in the back of the van. And they were trying to dress like clowns,
oh my gosh.
You know. And it became a phenomenon where the people were calling up the police. The police would turn up and they'd be gone. There'd be no trace of these clowns. They would they would be gone as soon as they came, and it became known as the phantom clown sightings. But it spread not only from Boston, Massachusetts, but all the way across America. It started happening everywhere, all of a sudden at the same time, and mass hysteria was going on. People were calling the police. The police phones were calling off the hook, saying, "I've got these clowns. They're trying to get our kids in vans. They're everywhere," you know. And the police could never find one. No matter what they did.
I'm old enough to remember when that was happening.
Yeah, it did happen before, you know, and it's nothing new. And that's odd, isn't it? It's just odd. And people try to say, oh, it was just a publicity stunt because Stephen King's It was coming out, the book or something like that. That book didn't get published until about 4 to 5 years later. So it had nothing to do with it.
Oh, interesting.
Nothing to do with it at all. And it's possible it was a Freemasonic secret society ritual to try and steal children. It was actually one of those, and they were dressing like their gods to do what God knows what with these kids they were trying to abduct, you know. In hindsight, it makes a lot more sense and why the police could never find them, because a lot of Freemasons are members of these places and high up orders, you know, and judges and members of the police and sheriffs and things like that. So it was likely a coordinated effort, you know, in many respects. I mean, John Wayne Gacy, for example, famous killer clown, right?
I was going to bring him up.
Pogo the Clown. Okay, so he was in Illinois, in Chicago, I think it was. I think that's where he was based, if I can remember correctly. I've wrote about him in my book, but I'm just trying to pull him from my memory now. Anyway, you know, he killed 33 people, right? Young boys. 33, a Freemason number, first of all. Right, he was seen mingling with CIA operatives and members of the Democratic Party. There's photographs with him next to a Democrat person of the time wearing an S pin, which implies Secret Service, like he was a part of something. He was a public servant who worked with the lighting in that area, the street lights and stuff like that. He was a member of the Buffalo Lodges, I think, the Moose Lodges, sorry, which is a Freemasonic fraternity.
Right.
He was also only an hour's drive away from his local Jester's Lodge, the Royal Order of the Jesters. And even then, he's only an hour and a half drive away to the headquarters of the Royal Order of the Jesters. And, he killed a lot of young boys and young men, okay?
Right.
And he was caught, overheard by the police, talking to two young boys, well, men, two young lads, talking about human trafficking, basically, and how John was like, I'm not going to go down for what you did, all this type of stuff. But these is implying that these two people he was talking to were people who brought him people to kill. They trafficked humans to him. Okay.
What?
Right, yeah. At least a couple of his victims were trafficked to him to abuse and murder. And the Royal Order of the Jesters, many of their members were exposed in 2000 from like 2003 all the way to like 2012. There's a big expose about them all. You can find documents online, FBI documents talking about the court cases. They were involved heavily in human trafficking. And a lot of them got caught as well, raping children abroad, doing horrible things, and all these type of things. And that's what the Jesters do. The human trafficking wing of the fraternal orders. And I don't think it's a coincidence that John Wayne Gacy, who at the peak of his murder spree decided to become a clown called Pogo, right? And that's when he really leaned into being a public clown. He was probably inspired by the people he was communicating with and working with, who were members of these fraternities that venerate the clown. It's just odd, but it's all there when you actually look into it and consider the geography of it all as well. He wasn't very far away from the headquarters of the people who do traffic humans. So I don't.
Sheesh. And this is still going on today. So I mean, it's unintended, but this is no laughing matter. And I didn't mean to shut up the chat. I've been watching the chat off and on, and they're talking about other things. And I said, "Hey, chat, pay attention!" And so there hasn't been a single comment in the last 4 minutes. So you have a very good audience, by the way, Mr. Stobbs, Professor Stobbs. What can we do to be aware of this? Because there's a spiritual war, right? But then there are these child trafficking, human sacrifice rings. Russ Dizdar, I'm sure you've heard of him, passed just a few short years ago. Suddenly, very mysterious circumstances, was researching human trafficking in the UK and elsewhere, Pennsylvania. Yeah. What can we do to be aware of because you're looking into this, you're looking deep into the abyss here, sir. So what can we do in our local communities to be aware without living in fear of a possible situation where children could be at stake, human lives, and it just happening right under our nose? And in your research,
just keep an eye on your own kids. I mean, what can we possibly do? We can't go hunting or accusing people necessarily, because we could be wrong. These people work in the shadows and behind the scenes. If you do go after them, you will be killed or destroyed or silenced one way or the other. People have tried with the Jesters and lost everything. Even when they were right and had the evidence, they still lost everything in the end. Coercion, and that's how these people operate, through fear and coercion. And all I would say is, if you don't want children to be kidnapped, keep an eye on your kids, know where they are, look after them, be the parent that they need you to be in this day and age. And that's all I could really recommend. I'm not looking to start a revolutionary movement myself. I'm just here to expose a particular symbol called the clown. But as a parent myself, it's just watch your children like a hawk, is all I could say. Yes. Because you just don't know. You just don't know who is and isn't a part of this. You can't know that, and I don't want to live in paranoid fear for my entire life either. But all we can do is just look after your own. That's the best advice I can give.
It's just like when we talk about demons and opening doors and portals to demons, we can't live in fear. And the Bible tells us 365 times to not fear. So we need to just live our lives in service to God, and then do what we're supposed to do as adults, as grown-ups, be responsible for what God has given us, and trust him to look after us and give us discernment when we need it, expose the darkness when we can.
Exactly. I believe that is
can't get carried away with it and there's a demon or a clown behind every rock, or,
Well,
so.
when I researched these things initially, and the demonic realm, and I had my own experiences, all they did was serve to prove to me that God is real. And Jesus is real too, and that we're in a real spiritual warfare. So the only reason I talk about these things is because I know it helps people who don't quite understand come to Christ. Right. It gives them a context to understand why this stuff is real. People who aren't in the church world, who might not have a bridge to understand Christianity and spiritual warfare necessarily, I find the clown seems to be a great bridge for a lot of people. It's a relatable one. A lot of people are going to feel it when they hear about the clown for some reason. And I've had many emails and messages of people telling me that my work on this Nephilim Clown stuff has brought them to Jesus. So,
Amen.
Wow, amen.
That's awesome.
Lord. And I'm surprised. Awesome. I'm surprised. I was surprised though. You know what I mean? I was like, really?
No, I know.
It's like, really? Yes. It's one of those. It's like, okay.
Great. God moves in mysterious ways, so you never know how
and again,
he's gonna work.
It's more power to us as well to know what our enemy looks like as well. So we can't be deceived. We were less deceived the more we know. Knowledge is power in that respect. I'm not saying knowledge is the be all end all of anything. I'm not a Gnostic in that way. But in this respect, you have to at least know what they look like, so you know what you're defending yourself against. And I feel like I've offered that.
Scripture does tell us to expose the darkness. So
absolutely,
there's that.
Yeah. And luckily, I don't think people take me that seriously as well. I think because of what I do is so obscure. I don't think the evil people or controllers are really looking at what I do and are taking it seriously. It's like no one's gonna believe the guy anyway. He's talking about clowns, But I find it is working subtly through people, this type of information. And I'm not trying to trivialize spiritual warfare by talking about this. Actually, I've been very careful when discussing this topic not to have circus music in the background or silly clown images, because I'm not making a joke of this. Like, I'm actually,
it's not a joke.
The clown itself isn't the important point. It's what they represent that I'm trying to explain to you. It's and I'm trying to be serious with this seemingly odd topic. It's one of those.
Yes. Well, and it's like for me, even though I grew up in the church, my paranormal and occult experiences, my experiences with the supernatural serve to prove even more that God is real, Jesus is real, the Bible is true, and realizing that most Christians don't even realize how supernatural really is. So it was that supernatural was that for me. So I
absolutely
get it.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions?
An amazing talk. Yes,
absolutely.
So many. I want to ask really quick, unless Geraldine, do you want to ask something? I've been hogging the questions here.
Oh, no worries. Paul, thank you so much for your time tonight. My question that I was kind of percolating in my mind was, so I know that in the book of Enoch, it talks about how one of the fallen arts or what have you that the fallen angels taught humanity was cosmetics of like shading of the eyes and what have you. And I used to wear the whole 9 yards. I mean, just foundation and powder and blush and and eyeshadow and eyeliner and mascara, and sometimes I still do. But I feel kind of naked without the lipstick or whatever. So is there any kind of like makeup or cosmetics connection with the clowns or Nephilim, or is it just something that is like to fancy one's features or what have you?
Yeah, so I believe it was Azazel who taught the art of beautifying the eyelids. I think it describes it as, and things like
beautifying of the eyelids.
And using makeup as a form of witchcraft and as a method. Now, I think we've misinterpreted that as for our modern lens, what it meant to teach humans something like that. It wasn't just simply to make women more beautiful to attract mates. It wasn't just. I think it wasn't simply just all about lust when he was talking about beautifying oneself or changing the way one looks using cosmetics and makeup and dress and garbs and things like that. I think they were handing down and teaching them the shaman methods of using costumes to channel spirits. I think that's literally what that was the knowledge they were teaching them.
Interesting.
What I've just told you, you dress like the thing to channel the thing in the spiritual realm.
Right.
You need to mirror. You need to mirror the thing that's in the other side, as above, so below. While we're here, you need to look like the thing that's over there. If you do that, you bring it closer to you, and then you can become one. That's what channeling is.
Right.
That's probably the knowledge that was really being taught there by Azazel.
Right.
You make up the face to look a certain way. You end up channeling this spirit or this energy or this thing.
Right.
You do this and dress this way. You can channel this particular spirit that looks like this. And I think that's what they were teaching. They were teaching them witchcraft. It wasn't just about making yourself sexy so you can get men to have sex with you or something. I don't think it was that simple. I think it's far trippier than we can understand. And
it was an occult purpose to divine or to attract the spirits thereof.
Absolutely.
Right.
Probably in preparation for what was coming in the future. Because they knew God was going to take revenge on what happened, and they did. He made the Nephilim kill each other in bloody petty power squabbles, and he made the angels who made them, their parents, watch. That was the punishment for the watchers, to watch their beloved ones kill each other. That's how the original Nephilim died. But the Nephilim's children and grandchildren, the Nephil and the Elio and the Eliud, each iteration down, they were still knocking about, you know. But now there's disembodied spirits of Nephilim knocking about, and the humans have been taught the methods necessary to channel them, which is to dress like them from the teachings of Azazel. Use the makeup, use the costume, do the ritual, and you can bring them back into you, and you can still commune with them. Because these old heroes of old, men of renown, the ancient kings and rulers and gods, that's what they used to be to a lot of humans at the time. Gods. Something to look up to, something to venerate, something to emulate, something to be like. And that's why you have things like headboarding, to squash the head of a child to make it look longer. They're trying to be like
look
something.
conical, like the Nephilim, right?
There's loads of practices like that. That's why they elongate the necks with the rings, for example, in some African tribes. You know, it's
and there's this Thailand tribe that's not only with the African tribes, but the Thailand tribes also do that too. The Karen, the long-necked Karens, and they every year of a girl's life, they have their neck elongated, and if they were to actually remove the rings, they would die immediately because their neck would collapse.
Well, there's the Anu tribe of Japan, which is a very ancient tribe. It's not like it's not of Shinto tradition or anything like that. When the young women become of age, they tattoo a big wide black smile on the face as well.
It's interesting.
But these are beauty standards. There's a tribe in Africa where all the men get in a line, put clown makeup on and elaborate headdresses, and jump up and down, and the highest ones who can jump. While also they're on an extremely toxic, potent drug at this point as well. By the way, they're tripping hard. They make the whites of the eyes stand out as much as possible, and the whites of the teeth stand out as much as possible. And they have this wild look on the face while jumping as high as they can to attract women. Because it's a beauty standard to be the tallest with the biggest teeth and the widest eyes. They're trying to emulate something which they've held up as a symbol of strength and power, which is the influence that these Nephilim had on their ancient ancestors that built their cultures. So they have these traditions, which are ancestor spirit veneration traditions, and the way they dress to try and emulate gives us clues to what that specific region's version of these gods looked like. And they all have some kind of clownish feature, all of them. Yeah.
Fascinating. Very interesting.
So to answer your question, yes, makeup is very much tied to this. Very much. And I think you do have to do very specific things though, and if you white the face up as much as possible, that's a very basic, powerful method alone. I've seen artists just do that alone to channel demons. A lot of tribes just white themselves up as much as possible. That's probably the basic, all you need to get the minimal amount of connectivity to the Nephilim. If you can red the lips up and red the nose and add multicolored patterns to the face, even better. If you could put on a big wild red feathered headdress or something made of straw or diamonds or jewels that's elaborate and large, even better. More powerful connections. If you can then put on a costume that's multicolored of ribbons and patterns and reflective jewels and all over the place, even better. But the base is just as white as possible.
That sounds like the Japanese geishas, where their faces are white and their hair is elaborately dressed, kind of in a reptilian sort of way, and or it's fanned out, and that is quite interesting. That every culture has some mimicry of the Nephilim.
Well, geishas are actually comedians as well. They're actually entertainers. That's what they do. Their job is to entertain.
Jesters.
Yeah, and they use the Tao as a method to create like humor, you know, and to go with the flow of things in the moment. So they basically, these men get together and have a meeting. The geishas would be there to offer moments of like fun, and but not in like a prostitute type of way or a sexual way, of like making them think, and giving them scenarios that make them laugh or humorous in like in a philosophical sense, you know. So they're actually philosophical comedians is what a geisha actually is. It's not a prostitute in the sexual sense. And they do dress in black and white lined fractaled clothing. They make the head look as large as possible with the way they do the hair, white skin, red lips. They also blacken the teeth. They make it black. They put a black gum over it, like a very odd looking black substance. So it's very, very strange, but it's like a beauty standard again. It's where did it come from? What's the roots of these things? And it goes back. It just goes back to the same point. It's what the Nephilim looks like, the ancient gods, kings, and rulers. And a lot of people don't like what I say because they think, oh, look, a typical another white Christian out there calling anything that's not Christianity evil, you know. And I'm literally just calling a spade a spade. I'm pointing out the history.
Right,
here.
Absolutely.
Like you don't have to be Christian to go and look at what I've seen and point these things out. Is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
Patterns are patterns. Right, the things that are obvious are things that are obvious. A spade is a spade, and I'm going to call one when I see one. And one thing I'll also say, which, you know, to summarize this point, just because it's your culture doesn't mean it's special. I'd say that that's kind of the underlying argument here. A lot of people are a bit echo chambered in their own specific culture, that they think that theirs is special and unique. And what I'm learning is actually they're all the same. Very much all the same, actually, you know, with cultural...
They came from the Tower of Babel, and they disseminated from there.
The only thing that's wholly different is the Christian perspective. And that's where all my work led. Every other religion will want to tell you are a god, fundamentally, or have the capacity to be as God if you do enough work. Christianity is the only one that tells you that no. You fall very short of that, and you have a lot of work to do, and you're in the middle of a war zone, and you don't even know it. And
that's right.
You know, that's kind of what I'm trying to point out. It's a minefield out there.
Yes,
like it's a literal minefield. Yeah,
definitely.
Paul, you bring a level of scholarly and gentlemanly prowess and professionalism to this dialogue that is so needed and welcome. And I can welcomed both. As someone that's lived in Asia for 20 years and studied Chinese and Japanese and just I don't want to talk about me too much, but you're on it, and this is really exciting, and we should do a part 2 eventually, but I would look forward to seeing your book published soon, and I hope that people will also subscribe to your Patreon. Do you want to just tell people where they can support you?
Sure. So
endeavors that you're doing here, because you're providing a great service to humanity and to this whole movement.
Oh, thank you. That's a very generous description. I don't take compliments very well, so we'll leave it at that. But so if you want to find any of my work, it's all on YouTube. That's where I'm based. That's where I've been for 10 years, and that's where I'm going to continue to be for as long as I can get away with it. So YouTube's the place to find me. If you want all of my work on this, I have playlists dedicated to all sorts of topics. There's one there just for the Nephilim Clowns. You can see all my collaborations with other channels as well. I talk about many topics, and it's a very broad YouTube channel, but I do specialize in this clown stuff specifically. But also, if you want to support the book, there is a GoFundMe. You can go and support there. I have just closed the signed copy pre-orders. I've already had 80 pre-orders for a signed copy, and I've capped it at that now. But you can still donate. Any donation now, though, will get you just a special mention in the book and acknowledgement. Your name will get to go in the book at the end. So that's what's on offer now. But I've had to stop the pre-orders because they kept coming in hard and fast, and I'm like, I can't. I've got to ship 80 books around the world now when I published them. Like, so I'm going to stop it there. But luckily the fundraiser's there to pay for that, so it's all sorted and covered. But it's a lot of time and work. I am about to publish volume 1.
Awesome.
Like I said, there's going to be 2 volumes, so the full volumes will be combined into 1 book as well in a year's time once that's published. But volume 1's published in about 2 months. I'm aiming for. I'm pretty much there. It's just all the little nuanced little bits you've got to get finished. The fiddly bits, the law side of things, the trademark side of things, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just ironing all that stuff out now, and hopefully 2 months that should be published. And I do have a Patreon. If you want to go there, it's got extra stuff on there you won't find on the channel. It's nothing like, I'm not withholding information from anybody. It's more like when we have a talk, for example, here. Sometimes when we turn it off, we have a bit of an after talk, don't we? Sometimes I put them on Patreon, sometimes I don't. So that's kind of what you get on my Patreon, a bit of behind the scenes stuff if you're interested in that. And that's it. So YouTube is where I'm at. I am on Rumble, but I'm using it as a backup channel now. I'm just moving everything over there, just in case that one day they decide to shut me down and I have another backup somewhere,
Please get an Odyssey, ODYSEE.com.
I'm on there.
Back up your...
It's all done.
Good, okay.
It's all on there. Everything's backed up on there as well. So I'll never disappear as an entity if YouTube shuts down, but if you want me, that's where I am. YouTube's the place to be, guys. And you can always email me as well. All the details are just in any video you watch. Go to the description and all my details are there. Yeah.
Excellent. That's awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much, Paul, for your time. Does anybody have any last minute burning questions? Don, Michael, we're good?
So many. I look forward to talking to you about the Millennium and your other research and how it all ties together. But I know after 2 hours,
we'll do a part 2.
The chat is on. I want to just commend the chat. You have a great audience, sir. It's really cool to see. Everybody is just funny. They're polite. Interesting people. So good job, chat.
The community I have is wonderful. They've been there forever, and it's growing. And I've got some people that've been with. But there's also a Telegram. Actually, I forgot to mention. It's got over 1,000 people in there now. It's just called Understanding Conspiracy. The links are in my videos again. You can come and literally talk. You can come and talk to me on Telegram any day of the week. I'm on there all the time. The guys know me on there, and we're always sharing stuff. There's multiple sections and discussion topics on there as well. So yeah, but most of my community, we're a tight knit crew, and it's always growing. And it's cool. I enjoy them.
Fun. Well, guys, engage, and thank you for having us. Yes,
thank you so much for being our guest on the Cross Files, and we really, really appreciate you. And we look forward to doing a part two about the clowns as Nephilim. And it's just a fascinating topic. I never ever would have thought that clowns have anything to do with the Genesis 6 account. Who would have thunk it, as they say?
Well, exactly.
So, fascinating, amazing. Dawn, now that you're back, did you have a last minute question?
Nope, I'm good. Happy Resurrection Day.
Yes, happy Resurrection Day, everybody.
And that was my cat.
And your cat. Hi, Fanny. All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We really appreciate your time. And I know it's late over there since you're 5 hours ahead of us, and it's 8:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here. So it's fairly late. So I'm sure your wife and your child probably want you to go to sleep. So we'll let you go. Thanks again for your time. We really appreciate you. Amazing, fascinating discussion. Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Wait, our website is crossfiles.org.
Yes, crossfiles.org.
Shamelessly plugging. Because you're so famous, you're going to make us famous too. We're already out. We're getting you out there. Crossfiles.org is our website, and thank you for supporting this. We have a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah, so I will put the link.
We'll do another show.
I'll put the link in the description.
I'm a newbie podcaster. I just started, so I'm a nobody.
Oh yeah,
share your somebody.
Dawn, what's your what? Share your podcast, please.
It's a new Dawn podcast, but you'll find it. It's a new Dawn -truth 2, the number 2, the letter B, told.
We'll have it in our show notes.
Yeah,
truth to be told.
Yeah, send me anything in writing and links wise, and I'll put them in the description for my video. That's fine.
Awesome.
Guys.
Okay.
Thanks,
All
Paul.
right.
So much.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a happy Resurrection Day or evening. God bless you.
God bless you.
Good night. Thanks for everybody.
Bye.
Good night.